perhaps the greatest way to learn most of what we need to learn in life is to walk alongside a teacher, a master, an expert, and to not only watch and listen, but to do with guidance and correction, encouragement, and more lessons. We've been walking alongside Jesus as recorded in Luke's Gospel, hoping that we might learn something more about him and perhaps more importantly, more about us and what we're called to do, who we're called to be. Today we'll take a look at this passage from Luke 9, the first 6 verses. I'll be reading the words in yellow and encourage you to read aloud those words in white print. When Jesus had called the 12 together, he gave them power and authority to drive out all demons and to cure diseases.
And he sent them out to proclaim the kingdom of God and to heal the sick.
He told them, take nothing for the journey. No staff, no bag, no bread, no money, no extra shirt.
Whatever house you enter, stay there until you leave that town.
If people do not welcome you, leave their town and shake the dust off your feet as a testimony against them.
So they set out and went from village to village, proclaiming the good news and healing people everywhere.
When they were given their instruction, when they heard their calling, Luke says afterwards, they set out to do it. It seems to me that at some point in time, as individual people of faith, as congregation, occasionally we need to look back and review where we've been, what we've heard, what we've been called to do. And as we issue our own evaluation, I think there's a big difference between the A or an E. When we look back, did we, like those disciples, set out? S-E-T. Or will it be said that we sat out? S-A-T. I just was a guest at a wedding yesterday. I'm not all that frequently a guest at a wedding. And as it turns out, really the only people my wife and I knew were the bride's parents. And so when we got to the reception, we sat at a large round table all by ourselves, hoping that maybe someone would come along that we knew. Instead, a couple came along, asked, oh, is it okay if we sit here? And we said, absolutely. And the first words out of her mouth is, we don't know anybody in this place. I said, well, we don't either, so welcome. And it was a fascinating experience for me. They were just a couple years older than us. And said that they had met in Terre Haute in college years ago. I said, Indiana State, and I usually say that with a little scowl on my face. Indiana State, no. He says, Roseland? I said, and you went all 4 years. Because I only stayed 2, and then I ran off looking for, I don't know, another girlfriend, I think. And from then on, the rest of the story as it unfolded, as I look back at it, I honestly just have this little twinge, these are the kind of people that go to wedding receptions, sit down with people they don't know, and just make up stories. Because it was a wonderful life they were describing, and I hope it was true. It was certainly entertaining, because as it turned out, not only did he graduate from Rose-Hulman, but he was the valedictorian of his class. Not only was he the valedictorian of his class, but when he was recruited as a senior in high school, he was awarded a full scholarship for 4 years to come there, and was asked if he would come and start a debate team at Rose-Hulman, because in their conference they didn't have a debate team and they thought it was an embarrassing thing. So this guy, as a senior in high school, was offered a full ride, room, board, everything, those expenses, and he was going to come and be the star debater in a debate team. His wife was the very first female to take classes at Rose-Hulman. And maybe that doesn't sound like a big thing to you, unless you've ever been part of a gender-specific college. Rose-Hulman had been all male, and while they had sent college students from Rose to Indiana State to take some humanities classes in some sort of reciprocal process, there had never been an ISU student go out to Rose to take any of the science, engineering, and math courses, until she was interested. And when she submitted her name and wanted to go out and take a class, they got a call from the president of the university, president of Rose-Hulman, saying, no, she can't come. It was simply against school policy. Ended up in this great debate between the school president and the school president, in which she was the subject, and before you know it, she is going out there for 1 or 2 classes and eventually moves on. By this time in life, they own a big home in Michigan, and sell watercraft, because they've already retired from corporate life and are just running their own business. But they also have a home in Wyoming, where they stay in the winter and they sell mountain gear and snowmobiles. I just wonder whether when these disciples came back from their tour in the countryside, whether or not that's what it was like. Let's sit down and somebody is the star. Somebody did amazing things. Somebody healed and was cheered by the villages, and maybe somebody else just went from village to village and got escorted out of town and shook their dust off their feet. Had no success at all. I say that because I think that that's the reality in a lot of our lives, regardless of whether we call ourselves a laity or a minister or clergy or whatever. That sometimes when we listen to this call, we go out and we do what we can, and we get met by resistance and by people who just don't care, or by people who are violently opposed to us. And sometimes we don't get anything done. And others, it would seem, walk into wonderful situations and have great results and something to cheer about, and they go on television and they go on tours and they write books, and they're these great success stories. And I wonder what happens when they all come back together and they sit at the same table and they tell the story of their ministry. What would your story sound like? Jesus called you. You accepted the call. And over time we realized this isn't a call to be served. This isn't like, just volunteering to receive all the benefits. We aren't the consumers. We are the employees. We are the workers. We're not the ones who are being comforted. We're the ones doing the comforting. We aren't necessarily the hungry being fed. We're the ones feeding the hungry. We are here to do the work, and when we get sent out to do the work, what does our story sound like? If you spent some time thinking about it, trying to review the impact that you and your faith has had on someone else, what kind of stories would you tell? I wonder sometimes whether we aren't often so intimidated by those great success stories that we begin to think so little of anything that we've ever done or accomplished that we don't even recognize it anymore. You know what I'm saying? Someone tells about who they've influenced and how they've influenced and the impact they've made. Oh, I cheered the drive for United Way last year. Well, that's wonderful. Compared to that, I didn't do anything. There are people who can, I've done this and I've influenced this and I've brought this many people to Christ and it's wonderful. But in comparison, it's like, I'm an also ran in the race. I maybe never even left the gates, it seems. It feels that way. And perhaps so we lose an understanding of what it is we have to offer and how we've offered it and the impact it's had. You can add in humility. That kind of gets in the way once in a while. But I wonder if somehow if we come back from our mission trip and we just aren't sure that we made any difference. And so perhaps some of the best conversations that can ever happen in a congregation are the ones where we tell each other the ways in which the others around us have influenced us. Can you imagine? I know it's not the kind of thing that would happen, but we were all gathered and we just started telling stories about our own faith journey and the ways in which other people around us, by name, have made an impact on us. And you're sitting there thinking that you're an also-ran and you hear this person mention your name. Well, I had no idea that the card I sent to them at that particular time in life really made an impact. I sent it. I didn't realize that when I went up and offered them a hug on that particular Sunday, it really meant something to them. I almost never know the right things to say, and usually when I do say something, it's the wrong thing to say. But a couple of these people said that they heard something from me that meant a lot to them. We tell these stories, right? And the truth is that some of us are sitting here on any given Sunday or any time through the week remembering someone we've known in the life of the church and what she used to say or what he used to say, or how they treated us, or what they may have taught us. can't honestly say there's a day that goes by in which Jim Payton doesn't influence you. Even if you disagree with something he said, there's still an influence. An elder that you remember somehow something about the way he or she prayed at the table honestly called me away from the rest of my life and helped me be fully present right there and then. And I experienced communion with God and the saints because of that prayer. Or when one prayed for the offerings and suddenly, wow, I never thought of it that way until I heard that person say it. Now I'll never forget it. If we would tell those stories, and we heard Arnie mention, I'm not saying we'd get puffed up with pride, but I think we'd be able to more fully appreciate the gifts we've been given. The fact that we have been part of this whole work of God through Christ all along, even though we didn't see it, we didn't know it. And when Jesus called us to go, we set out. I think probably like these 12, clueless. What are we going to do when this happens? I don't know. Run? Make something up? I don't know. Maybe I'm just going to be who I am. Maybe I'm just going to tell my honest story. Maybe I'm just going to give my genuine answers. You know? That's a great question. I don't have a clue what the answer is. I just get up in the morning and act on faith and try the best I can, but I'm not the answer man. You know? You're right. People probably ought to do more than that. I've never found myself capable of doing that. I live my life in constant reminders of the things I probably should be doing that I just can't seem to get done. The real answers. Because we're not sent out as perfect examples. We're sent out as real human beings, children of God, people of faith, somehow trying to be both at the same time. How can I be fully human and yet a child of God? It's going to be filled with flaws and imperfections and miracles. I don't know that there's a lot more in this particular passage, but I do love the advice. And it's just as Jesus made his decisions last week among the Gerasenes. If you don't want me here, I'll leave. If you go into the village, if you go into a house, if you go somewhere and they just don't want you, then shake the dust off your feet and move on. And don't give it any more thought. And go somewhere and do something that people welcome and appreciate. Instead of constantly pounding on the door that has you locked out, or constantly beating up yourself because you weren't able to make an impact with this person or those people or them. Take your gifts, take your faith, and go somewhere to somebody who's ready to receive what you have to offer. And I don't know, maybe the first moments of the next life, you'll get to sit in the theater and review all the people who are overjoyed and blessed by what you did for them in those moments you shared. Maybe you'll be able to experience the full testimony of the impact your life had. And it's, I promise you, not going to have anything to do with the size of the house you own or the money you left behind or the title you acquired. It's going to be about the people you bless. It's going to be measured by the standards of Jesus. Did you give your life in service to others? How much of it? When? And what kind of impact did that have? I think if you could get your grade today on how well you've done so far, that you'd smile. And you'd be surprised. I was hoping for a D. I just wanted to pass. By the grace of God, that looks like an A. People must have been blessed by me much more than I ever realized. And knowing that, what's your next move? Let us pray. We don't always feel great confidence of God. We aren't always filled with assurance. We, in fact, frequently don't know what to do. But when you call us, we set out to do what we can. We set out to be who we are. And we are coming to believe more fully, more completely that who we are is sufficient. That yes, we have lessons to learn. Yes, there's work to do. But we are a blessing today, here, now. And we have more to offer the people around us than we can yet imagine. And so continue to open our eyes and ears and our hearts. Give us feet to walk in faith, that somehow simply making the effort is a miracle. That sometimes showing up is all that really matters. And let us continue to bless your world, inspired by your grace, answering the call of Jesus. Through Christ our Lord.